In this tutorial, we're going to create the crown for our sun, this big corona on the outskirts, and I'll show you a few ways to go about it and how you can animate it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Just in case you're following along with me in my tutorial series, and you want to have the exact same looking sun effect, let me just show you what settings I used. Let's go to render viewport. Let's change the background to black. And let's just get a nice view of that. Right, so if you want to have something that looks exactly like that, let's go through all the settings quickly. Number one, you're making this color a reddish orange, something like that. Number two, I'm sure you've already done that. I think the main thing that might be different is just the random settings on your oil, as well as this oil over here. And obviously you can pause if you want to change anything, as well as your vector noise, as well as your other vector noise. And that should be it. Everything else should be the same. So once you've done that, the very next thing we want to do is go over here, press numpad 7, press Shift A, choose a mesh and make sure it's a circle. Next thing you want to do is press S to scale this out a bit, so it's a little bit bigger. Something like that looks good. Then press Tab, go to edit mode, press E to extrude, S to extrude inwards, and bring it in so that it's inside, just about inside of the sun. There we go. And there we have it. That's looking pretty good. Press Tab, go into object mode. Now that we've got this selected, the next thing we want to do is go make sure, let's rename the circle to, oh, my PC is a little bit slow today, like every day. Let's rename the circle to Corona or Crown. I'm going to call it Crown. I'm going to create a new collection. The new collection is going to be called Sun Corona. And we're going to chuck the crown into the sun corona, because that's essentially what we're doing here. And one thing you want to do is unpin this so that it doesn't mess with this, and then we can create a new material for our corona. First thing you probably want to do, well, you'd want to do, is delete the principled BSDF. We're not going to use that. We're going to press Shift A. We're going to go to our shaders. The first shader we want is a mix shader, so we'll chuck that in over there. Hover over this with your mouse, press Ctrl Shift click, and we'll connect it, which is nice. Then we need to add two more shaders because we're using a mix shader. The two shaders we're going to use is a transparent shader. We'll connect that over here, and Shift A, an emission shader. Chuck that over here. And we'll just connect this as well and take a quick look. Oh, I think I got it backwards, so I think we need to just turn this around, have our emission first, then have our transparency. We'll might have to turn this around in a sec, we'll find out. Change the factor to 0.5, and now we can move on to the next step. And obviously if we select the crown and we press numpad 1, it doesn't really help when it's in this position. So the way we fix that is we press 1 to be in front orthographic view, then we press Ctrl Shift numpad 0, and we select our camera, and we just put our camera in place somewhere like this. There we go. You can deselect your camera here. The next thing you want to do is go to the object constraint properties, but make sure you select your crown, add a constraint, and we're going to add a copy rotation, and we're going to select our camera. I'm going to view this through this lens here. So we got rotation. Have we selected the right object? One sec. Ah, of course, it's not visible for whatever reason. There you go. So what this does is if we moved here and we move the camera hypothetically here, the crown would automatically rotate. Control Z, just put it back into numpad 1. So that's extremely useful. Right, next step. Next thing we want to do is change this to our UV editor. Select our corona, press tab, go into edit mode, and press A, select all, and with everything selected, press 3 for face select, select all the faces. You can press U and click unwrap. And once you've unwrapped, go over here, select these two, and just type in SX0, no, Z0, Y0. SY0, select these two bottom ones. SY0, select these two over here. SX0, and select these two over here. SX0. Once you've done that, press 3 for face select. Select this face. That should be perfectly even. And with that face selected, you can press U again and follow active quads and say OK. Now you've got this, which is looking pretty good. So the first thing we want to do is press 2 for edge select. And first thing we want to do is select all of this, press S, and just scale this in. And the objective here is to get both edges here perfectly in, so it's nice and neat. And this part of the tutorial is a little bit boring, time consuming, but it kind of has to be done, so can't be helped. And let's press S a little bit more. That side is in, but this side is not. So I'm just going to guess it. Yeah, I'm going to press G, X, bring it in about halfway. S, X, bring it in to about there. Let's take a look on the other side. SX, bring it in half. Oh, too much. SX, bring it in about halfway. Go to the other end, GX, and bring it in. Next thing we can do is select all of this, zoom in, press G, Y, and bring this down to the appropriate spot. You can hold in Shift for a little bit more control. And then we can do the same at the top here. Select all of it and press G, lock it to the Y-axis, bring it up, zoom in, GY, and we are set. And just like that, we've UV unwrapped the crown, which is perfect. Alright, let's make sure that our emission is at the bottom and our transparent BSDF is at the top, and we'll get to this later. Next thing we want to do is select the sun that you've created, press tab, go into object mode, select the sun, and find the low frequency noise group that we created. Select all these elements within this group. Press Ctrl C to copy it, then click on your crown and press Ctrl V to paste, and perhaps bring this just a little bit closer, and we are going to connect this color to this factor. Here we go. Oh, come on. I really need to get a second screen at some point. Give it a little while to load. And we can adjust play with some of these settings. One of the first things I'd want to change is we can delete this. We can delete this. And we can bring this out a little bit. And we can connect this. And we can also connect it over here because we just created it. And if you, one sec. Yeah, so if you hold in Shift, Control Z, if you hold in Shift and you click with your right mouse button, it might be left or right depending on your setup, you just bring it down like that, holding in Shift, it creates this. And I can just makes things a little bit neater. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But there's a few more things we want to do here. Let's just take that apart. And currently we don't see much. So let's press Shift A, go to your converter, and we're going to separate the XYZ axis over here. We're going to press Shift A, and we're going to combine the XYZ axis at the same time. And then we're going to press Shift A. We're going to create a math node over here. Lift this up so it's out the way so we can see everything. Change this to multiply. It's so small I can't even read this. Oh my goodness, sorry about that if you can't follow along on the screen. That's why I'm just naming it, so it says multiply. And we probably want to ramp this up to about 13. But we also want to connect the y-axis as well as the, oh my goodness, potato computer here, the z-axis. Before we continue, just so that we can see what's going on, hover over this, press Control Shift, and then click this, so that we only see what this does to the scene. And we can see that, and we can adjust this obviously. So for example, if we made the strength 1, it's too blurry. If we make the strength 15, or let's try 12, see it looks more appropriate in size. Whatever it's 25, it'll probably be way too small. 25 is also actually okay. But I'm going to make it, let's try 16. Let's make it 16. And select your multiplier over here, press Shift D to duplicate it. Chuck it down here, hover over the y-axis, click, and just bring this up. Oh my goodness. Let's try that again. Here we go. But this time we're changing multiply to add to get the desired result. And we can play around with this. So if we put this on 1, it still looks okay. Let's try 2.3. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to mess with this too much just yet. We'll get back to that. So what this, let me just zoom in here so you can see what it actually does. So what this value does, when you move it up, the emission is going outward if you move it up. So if you want it, if you want this to, well, that's exactly what I want with this first emission, so that's perfect. So we'll leave it as that. We'll leave it on 1 for now, but later if we want to animate this, we just have to increase this and it will give the right effect. However, there's another layer to this, as you may know, so we'll just select all of this over here. And we will press Control Shift D. Oh, pardon me, I made a mistake. You can select these 3 and you can just press Shift D, bring it down. And really wish I had a bigger screen so it would be easier to see what the hell is going on here. Let's zoom in here. We want to connect the UV to this as well. And we want to connect this to this as well. And you can hold in, you can select this point and press Control X. Now we haven't actually changed much really, because if we increase this amount, it still goes outwards. Well, as you can see, the other layer just stands still. But we don't want them to go in the same direction because it won't give the effect we're going for. We want them to go into different directions. So let's just pull that back. We're going to change this. Instead of having it on add, we're going to make this the opposite, which would be subtract. And the way we would make them both work for easy animation, as my computer remembers to work, you're going to press Shift A, input, value, chuck this in over here. This is where we will control this whole animation of the crown, and we will connect this to the value over here and the value over here. So now when we increase this, if my computer can even handle it, it's going in and out and it's giving that right turbulent effect that looks a lot better, which I'm quite happy with. Next thing you can do is go to the mix over here and just change it to add. Let's see if it looks right. Let's reduce this, see what the difference is. What happens if we increase it? Now this is all up to personal preference. You can leave it on 0.5, you can leave it on add, or you can leave it on multiply. Just use your own preference. Keep in mind all the dark spots you see is what's going to be transparent. And if we up this to the max, oh, come on. Personally, I prefer this, but perhaps let's try 0.3. 0.6. I'm going to leave mine on 1 for now. I'll probably adjust this later. I'm leaving mine on multiply. Yeah, but I think this part is pretty much done. So what we really want to do is select everything over here and press P. Ooh, hold on. So you can select all these objects and hold in Shift and press P. And we're going to call this, let's label it Corona animation. So all of this is for the Corona animation to work the way we want. Before I continue, I just want to play around with multiply quickly and just look at the difference. So if we move add all the way down to 0, this means that it's only taking into account, if we mess with this value here, one of the elements. It's only going out now where the other is standing still. So perhaps we want that, but perhaps we also want the other element to stick out a little bit, but not as strongly. So if we made this 0.35, let's take a look at how it looks. And this is all to do with your artistic flavor. So it's mainly going out, but a little bit's going in, and you can kind of feel it. It's got that effect. It's a little bit too bright for me, my taste, so I'm probably just going to reduce this to 0.2 and leave it like that. Right, next thing we want to do is create the crown's fade effect, where it doesn't stay bright at the edges, but it's actually less bright. And the way you do that is Shift A, Textures, and we are going to make use of gradient texture. There it is. And hover your mouse over this, hold in Control, Shift, and click. And we can see how it looks. Currently, it's bright on this side, dark on this side, and that's not exactly what we're going for. You can press Control T, I believe, to make these options pop up with your mouse hovered over that, and that just helps save some time. And since we've created a UV map, I believe we should use the UV map in this case. And we can see where the seam is, and we'll have to fix that later on, but that's looking good. Next thing we're going to do is press Shift A, search. We're going to type in color ramp, and we're going to paste a color ramp over here. Pull this out a little bit more. Actually select this, holding Control X. bring this here, press Shift A, go to color, and hold on, just search for color ramp again, chuck it over here, search A, go to converters, go to math, click over here, change this to power, and the way we get this aligned in the right direction is to do with the mapping, and I believe that we've got to make, let's try the z-axis at 90. Let's try it at minus 90. Yeah, that looks correct. Now if we go to the power, if we make this 1, it gets less. So the higher we make this, the less it gets. And you can choose how far out you want your aura to be. And I think something like 3 should be okay for this example. So that's looking pretty good. Let's zoom in so you can see. Alright, so now we can move on to the next step. Go over here to where you have this and press Shift D to duplicate it. And click over here. And with this being the only object you selected, press Alt P. So it's no longer part of that corona animation and it's its own thing. Chuck it in over here. And change add to multiply. And just increase the strength to 1, and you'll get a very nice looking effect. The next thing you want to do is you want to connect your color ramp to 1, and that means all of this, give it a second to load, all of this is going to be in color 2, and we can actually select all of this. Press Shift P, and I'm just going to call it crown fade. So we've got the elements that control the fade of the crown, and we've got the elements that make up the animation and style of the crown, which is down here, which is pretty dope. And obviously we need to connect this now into this factor, and you can hover over here on your mix shader and press Shift Control click, and we can see how it looks now somewhat as a final result before we add color. Might be a few things we quickly need to tweak. Alright, so everything looks like it's connected properly, but this doesn't look right. So we're going to have to go back to our corona animation and mess with the color ramp. So the first color ramp I want to mess with is this one over here. Just bring it out. A little bit like that would make more sense. And possibly mess with this color ramp as well. Let's see what it does. So perhaps select this, chuck this over here, make it a tad darker, and let's zoom in so we can really see what's going on. Tab, object mode. Also, okay, cool. So deselected so we can see everything. Okay, let's try and make this even darker. Okay, it isn't quite working the way I want, so I'm just going to minus it. So it's out of the equation. And we'll have to mess with the, let's stay zoomed in like this. Might have to mess with the power. So we want to hover over this, press Ctrl Shift click, so we can only see this effect. And frankly, I'm actually happy with this. I don't really want to mess with this too much. That looks good. This over here, on the other hand, is where we're running into some problems. Control Shift Click. And this is pretty much what you have to do when you troubleshoot to try and get this right. So when we bring this all the way back here, see, that looks a lot healthier. I do want to make it a bit darker because it's not exactly what I want. Perhaps let's try and invert this. Flip color ramp. Okay, that looks a lot more interesting. Okay, cool. We have a winner. Right, that looks good to me. And let's see if it's working properly. Control Shift Click. And let's increase the strength to 3. Let's choose a color to try and match what we have. Ah, I see what's going on. I think I might be an Eevee. There we go. Okay, switch to cycles. Make sure you switch to cycles, or else you're not going to get the right result here. Thinking, what the hell am I doing wrong? Okay. It's looking pretty good. I love this. And what happens if we make this 4? 5. It's looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. Right. We didn't really have to mess with anything. Let's invert this again just to see if there's a difference now, because it's the only thing we changed. See, that also looks nice. It's not bad, but personally I prefer this. It's just more passion in those flames. Right, let's move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step now is, let's move the multiply option all the way over here. And then let's select all these top elements here. Press Control Shift D. Oh, pardon me, just press Shift D. And press Alt P. So it's not part of that group, it's its own group. Chuck it here, chuck this over here. Change this to, oh, we'll mess with this now. Connect this to your color. And click on this, Shift Control click. And let's change this to add. And I think I'm going to connect this to the FAC. Shift click there. There we go. Now we can see how it would actually look. And we probably have to play around with these settings to get the powerful halo effect. Let's bring this down to about here. Okay, let's mess with this. See, now we've got that bright, thin line. Let's actually leave that over there. That's looking pretty good to me. And just play around with this until you get a look and feel that you like, obviously. Let's chuck this over here. Let's flip them. Let's take this and bring it in. No, flipping it doesn't work. Let's go back, and best thing we can do is just bring this in to the level that we like. I just want to zoom in so I can really see when it sticks out. Here we go. We can make it pop. Maybe half of it would shine even more. Something like that should be good, because then there's still that fade. Just take your time with this, it's no rush. It's about having fun. And looking at that now, I think it's a little bit too thick. Let's bring this back. Chuck it up to about there. Bring this in. Here we go, let's zoom out. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Just use your own artistic taste. Yeah, it's no such thing as perfection. Also, you can ramp this up. Control Z, also on 3.4. What does 4 do? Let's zoom in and just take a closer look. Change this to 4. 4.5. Zoom out. Yeah, there we go. Quite like that. Cool. Other thing we probably want to do is try and match the colors better. I think it's not bright enough. What if we just, instead of changing the color, we can just increase the emission strength? What would 20 do? Emission strength, that's probably too much. Let's leave this on 20. Let's select our main object. Let's mess with the emission strength of this. Let's make this 20. Okay, no. Let's make it 3. Okay, I like that. And you could change the color to make it match better. Just use your own preferences. I'm going to leave it on that. I'm quite happy. There we go. Well, let's try 10. Okay, cool. I quite like that. Right, so let's just quickly group what we have so far. Now, all of this really has got to do with the fade and highlight effect. So I'm just going to select all of these, press Alt-P. Do I have to select them individually? Oh, wait, let's try selecting all of these. Shift Alt P. No. Select one of them, Alt P. Hold on, what's going on? Okay. There we go. The group is deleted, and we can just select all of this. And we're going to call it the fade highlight effect. So now we press Shift P, fade and highlight. So essentially this is what we use to create the fade at the end, but also the highlight in the center at the middle there. And I guess we could add another power node, yeah? Math, click, change this to power. Let me zoom in so you can actually see. Power. And you can mess with this. The fade and highlight effect is looking pretty good. See how it looks in camera view mode. 0.75. Still with that thin line. Yep, I'm happy with that. Right, the final thing we need to do, if we take a look at our sun, look around the corona, around the crown, look for a place where the seam begins. You might have to, if you did a good job like this, it might be hard to spot. There it is. You can see it. Press tab, go into edit mode. Press 2 to choose edge select. Select this edge so you know where it is. And just make sure you don't forget where this edge is. Next thing you want to do is to go to solid view mode. And once you're in solid view mode, let's actually, oh no, come on, let's try that again. Let's get rid of this. Oh, come on. Not a fan. I don't know why this can't be made easier. There we go. Now I'm completely off. There we go. Got my spot. And we need to press tab, or you can click here, press tab and go to vertex paint. And you can click over here, make sure you're on F draw, change the color to black, and make sure the strength is on 1. And let me just double check. There it is. So we just have to go here and make this dark. And make sure you cover that, even if you cover it a little bit more than that spot, better be safe than anything else. And you can increase the brush size by pressing F, just get it up. But that's looking pretty good. Once you've done that, we can go back into render view mode, press tab, go into object mode, and you don't see any changes yet. Alright, now we have to go to our VR. And once you reach this point here, press Shift D. Lift this up, press Shift A, input, vertex color. We've just created a vertex color. Select Cull for color and connect this to color 1, connect this to color 2, and my word, this is so far away. Let me just bring this up quickly so I can see what I'm doing. It would help. Connect this color into here. Try that again. There we go. Let's go down here. See what happens if we replace it with the factor. Doesn't look right to me. Let's connect the color back into color 2 and change this to multiply. And that looks pretty good. Next thing we want to do is, with the crown selected, you want to press Shift D, right click so it locks back into original place, tab, go into edit mode, 3 for face select, A, select all. Pardon me, don't select all, just select these 2 faces over here that are by this spot, and then press Control I for invert, X to delete, and delete the faces, so all the other faces. Then select these 2. We're still in edit mode. Let's open up a new window quickly. And let's change this window to UV editor. And with not UV editor, sorry. Oh, come on. Okay, let's leave that for a second. Let's press tab, go into vertex paint, click on paint. Well, let's use solid view mode so we can see. Click on paint and click invert. So now it's in the opposite direction as the other one, which is perfect. Press tab, go into object mode, and press G to grab this, but press Z to lock it to the Z axis, but Z again to the local Z axis. And what you want to do is make it a slight offset. So you want to press G, Z, Z, and just make sure it's not touching the other one. And that would be more than fine to get the desired outcome. So now when we go back to rendered viewport, it's looking a lot cleaner. We can still see that line, but now it's a lot easier to fix. Alright, so now press tab, make sure you're in edit mode. Make sure you select the edge select one of the edges. You can right click, and we're looking for stitch, Alt V I guess. And by doing that, press tab object mode, click, look at that, it's perfect, you can't even tell. And we could mess with the settings, but I think that is the perfect result. You don't know where the seam is anymore, which is great. You can probably rename this to seam fix crown, and we're pretty much all set. We've finally finished making our crown, and the best part is if we move the camera around, let me just demonstrate this. Let's create a quick camera rig. Shift A, mesh, sorry, curve, circle, S, let's scale this out. Okay, with that scaled out, shift, select the camera. Oh, select the camera, shift, select the, oh, come on. Select the camera, shift, select the circle, press Control P, object. Let's rename the circle to camera rig. And with the camera rig installed, if we change this to 3D viewport, click on the camera, change it to render view mode, we can turn this off, render view mode. We can select this, and we can press R to rotate it, Z on the Z axis, and no matter where we rotate it, hold on, camera view mode, there we go, RZ. The corona is always exactly in the correct place, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, anyways, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I look forward to taking this to the next level.